Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing as we've got a UFC doubleheader to break down. For those of you on the West Coast, I guess you got to pull an all-night bender. For those of you on the East Coast, you're either staying up all night, you're getting up real early in the morning, or are you? Because this is absolutely freaking brutal. It's going to be starting at 6:30 in the morning Eastern, 3:30 overnight. Not bad for those of you on the West Coast. They're throwing it down in Macau. Going to break it down with Kuhn. Reed joined us last week along with Michael Venom Page, and thanks to everybody for the kind words as far as the interview with Michael Page was concerned. This kid's a monster. He really is. Like, I was in awe watching the show, just watching his highlight reel of watching what this guy has done. We had Kuhn on the show last week as well, but we didn't really have a lot of time left to break down the fights with Reed, so we got a full slate on today's program with Kuhn. We're going to break down the UFC 48 and 49. Yet, are these numbers accurate, really? UFC Fight Night 48, UFC Fight Night 49. Is that for this year? Is this like of all time? Like, come on, man. Seems like there's basically like, 48 fight nights a freaking year. Let alone like, we're only into UFC Fight Night 48 and 49, but we got UFC Fight Night 48 in Macau. As I stated, that's like overnight, early Saturday morning, and then they're throwing it down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're going back to Oklahoma and Tulsa for the first time in like nearly 20 years' time. We got some great videos this week, some really cool stuff. Frankie Edgar's Ice Bucket Challenge is laugh out loud funny in a nice wholesome family manner. We got maybe the coolest video ever here of a new sport that I think could be all the rage worldwide. So we got a ton of stuff to get to. Without further ado, let's bring in Reed Kuhn, Fightnomics.com. You can follow Reed on Twitter, and Reed's got that great book that we're always talking about whenever he comes on the show. But being the cool dude that Reed is, he's agreed to give away a couple of these books to you guys out there. So we'll settle that on Twitter a little bit later on. We welcome Reed Kuhn to the program. Reed, it's always a pleasure, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and now that we're back into the swing of things, no rest for the weary. This is going to be a busy weekend.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you just moved to the West Coast, man, because 6:30 in the morning, I don't know what's worse. Like, would you rather stay up all night, or would you rather wake up at 6:30 in the morning? I'm already up at 3:30 anyways. I've discovered the Flintstones is on in the middle of the night, and I just can't get enough, even though I've already seen them before. So I'm already up at that time anyway, so I don't mind. Throw the fact I'm a degenerate gambler. And, I like having some action. Normally, I got to bet on, like, Aussie, Aussie football or rugby at 4 or 5 in the morning. So I'm ready for this, but I'm going to be honest. And I know, there's a lot of MMA hosts out there. They pretend to know everything about everything. I'm not one of them. I'll be honest. I don't know anything about a ton of these guys on the prelim, Reed. So we're going to bypass that right now.
I appreciate that. And to answer your question, I think pre-having a baby, I would have been up already, and I just would have stayed up. Post-having a baby, I'm just going to get up early, and maybe I'll be feeding the little one with some milk while watching the fights on Fight Pass. I think it works out a lot better for me this way. Yeah,
something tells me the baby will probably wake up around the time that the Fight Pass starts. Yeah, we have a saying in the gambling world, if it's called Fight Pass, it means don't bet on the fights. It's called Fight Pass for a reason. But it doesn't mean, right now I don't know anything about these guys. It's the Chinese Ultimate Fighter TV show. So, but, we'll find a couple of spots. But we got an interesting main event here. And what I was more interested in is the picture that Kung Lee posted on his Instagram, in which he's a cross between the Incredible Hulk and Vitor Belfort. Now, Michael Bisping's a 3-1 favorite in this fight, yet man, Kung Lee looks so jacked, people thought it was Photoshop, but by all reports, it's actually a real shot, Reed. It's Macau. Is anyone really testing him out there? It's insane, man. He looks like one of these internet ads, the before and afters, where it's like, man, I don't even know if I want to look like that. Kung Lee's pretty fired up for this fight, evidently, Reed.
Yeah, I would hope that there's some testing going on just from the UFC as an independent body. They have the right to do that, and I think that's probably in all the clauses and all the contracts that they have with their fighters. But, yeah, to see a guy that ripped, it's surprising. Michael Bisping does have a history of losing to guys who are on testosterone, or otherwise looking a little more jacked than they need to be. But yeah, this is a little worrisome. But you gotta step back and think, well, maybe this is Kung Lee's Hollywood body. He's been lifting a lot. He needs to look good for the movies. And there's a difference between being Hollywood fit and fighting fit. And the fact that this is a main event going 5 rounds, that could be, it could be important either way, whether or not Kung Lee has the power to end it early, or if it means he's going to be fading fast.
Yeah, that's a great point that you raised. The first part of that is Hugh Jackman in The Wolverine is a great example. He's ripped, but he's really ripped in the movies, and I guess there's some like really dangerous diet out there. Basically, you don't eat for 24 hours. Basically, you figured out a trick so every vein is bulging out. So it's a great point that you raised as far as Kung Lee's Hollywood body, so to speak. Because, yeah, you got a body like that, you're going to break down, and how much gas can he actually have in the tank? And if there's one thing that we know about Bisping, Bisping can stay active through the duration of a fight, Reed.
Yeah, I mean, going round to round, he's going to have power early on that will fade, and these guys are probably going to keep it standing. Neither one of these guys is going to take it down, so I do think this will be a factor, and Bisping's size is also going to be a factor.
Now, you look at Kung Lee, 8 of his 9 wins by KO. He's 2 of 3 in the UFC, and I'll admit, I actually remember it like it was yesterday. It's amazing how I have a great memory for where I was during these fights, Reed, but I was literally in line at the Stratosphere in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they had the fight on, and it was one of these morning type deals as well, and I was catching some earlier winners. But I was actually like waiting to cash my Rich Franklin ticket. Like I went to the book. It was like, yeah, Rich Franklin's going to beat Kung Lee, and I'll cash my ticket. I had Rich Franklin in that fight, and Kung Lee, the guy might be 42 years old, but after what he did to Rich Franklin, I can't underestimate this guy. From a betting standpoint, I'm not laying minus 300 with Bisping here, Reed. Sounds like you're leaning with Bisping, but I just can't lay the 300.
No, I agree with you. I am leaning Bisping, but I don't think I would be willing to pay that kind of juice. I think the line is roughly right in that range. Bisping should be a favorite just because he is much younger, he is much bigger, he's definitely going to have a cardio advantage. So if he plays it smart and stays covered, doesn't wait on those kicks, keeps stuffing Kung Lee, pushing him against the cage, he should win the fight. And if he survives the first few rounds and wears him down, then it's going to become that much easier. But Kung Lee, boy, does that guy, he's got some crazy strikes. He mixes up his attack. You look at Michael Bisping, over 90% of his strikes are aimed at the head. For Kung Lee, it's more like 63%. He goes after the body, he goes after the legs, he's got spinning attacks. So he's going to be mixing it up, and he's going to be very dangerous early. And so that's a huge risk because we've seen Michael Bisping get caught. His defense, maybe, I don't know if his defense is looser, if just he can't take the punch the way he used to. But he is susceptible, and that is Kung Lee's specialty, is that crazy power strike out of nowhere. All
right, we'll take a quick break. We'll shift gears, and we'll hit the Oklahoma card. We got Dos Anjos and Benson Henderson. This Jordan Meehan and Mike Pyle fight, very, very interesting. And I'm going to lay it down on Francis Carmel. We'll find out if Reed agrees. MMA Meltdown continues.